BMW is never a predictable company, and their rear-wheel drive 1 Series sports hatch certainly isn't a predictable car, either in the way it looks or the way it drives. In second generation form, buyers in the Audi A3 and Mercedes A-Class segment looking for a premium badged, compact yet sporty car are promised more space, smarter quality and extra power balanced by impressive efficiency. BMW is a company that has always done things differently, a refreshing trait in a sea of automotive sameness. The Munich maker's reputation as the purveyor of the ultimate driving machine was built around rear-wheel drive and that famed perfect 50-50 weight distribution, cornerstones that were put to the test early this century when the time came at last to develop a compact hatch to slot in below their all-conquering 3 Series. Compact hatches are packaged so tightly that they can only really be front-driven, or at least that's what everybody thought until BMW bought out the 1 Series in 2004. They're also fairly conventionally styled, a concept this car again turned on its head with unique, unconventional looks that offered a real alternative to cars like the Audi A3, Volvo C30 and the Mercedes A-Class. Both these unique selling points were retained when, with 2.2 million global sales on the board, the time came to launch this car, the second generation 1 Series Sport Hatch, in the autumn of 2011. But much else was different and needed to be to face down the challenge of all new versions of key rivals like the Audi A3 and the Mercedes A-Class. The old one's cramped rear cabin and ugly duckling looks weren't going to cut it against such as these. Its engine efficiency figures would have looked disappointing, its interior cheap, all of these being reasons why throughout its life the original 1 Series was continually outsold in the UK by its pricier 3 Series stablemate. This improved version claims to have thoroughly addressed all of these issues, being bigger, smarter, higher tech and more efficient. It's going to have to be if it's going to be able to take on an even tougher set of rivals and continue to account for a third of all BMW's UK sales. Let's put it to the test. Behind the wheel, everything has changed, yet nothing is different. It's all much more upmarket in here, but the basics of the design are as good as ever. As with the original 1 Series, you sit low, cocooned by a broad fascia and central transmission tunnel. As before, the wheel and the gear stick fall beautifully to hand and feel great to use. And you get one of those start-stop buttons that you find in sports cars to fire everything into life. And on the move, well, uniquely in this class, this car is rear-wheel driven, as are all BMWs, assuming of course you discount the Mini. Why, the Munich maker asks, would you ever want your front wheels to have to try and simultaneously perform the tasks of steering and deploying power? Now, if you're an enthusiast, you'll notice the difference immediately you throw this car into a tight bend and feel the back end push you around the apex. In the wet, if you're feeling brave enough, you can even turn off the dynamic traction control and let the back end slide out a bit. The extent to which you can enjoy all this will probably depend a little on whether you're satisfied with the standard steering setup or whether you want to pay extra for the variable assistance Servotronic arrangement, or even go as far as getting the variable ratio active steering fitted. And if you can't be bothered by all the driving technicalities and you're not a would-be racer, well, you don't have to be a Grand Prix driver to appreciate slick body control aided by a chassis that's 30% stiffer, or perfect cornering balance helped by a wider track, or perfectly judged damping, even if you choose not to pay extra for the optional adaptive system. Sum it up how you will, maybe just as an extra feeling of responsiveness that you can't quite put your finger on, but is very pleasing nonetheless. And with this second generation 1 Series, that responsiveness is something that to some extent you can tailor to the mood that you're in and the road that you're on, thanks to what BMW calls drive performance control. It's activated via this rocker switch just to the right of the gear stick, and pressing the different modes enables you to flick between systems that remap the engine, tweak the DSC stability control, and even alter the shift points of the 8-speed ZF automatic gearbox if you've chosen it in preference to the slick shifting 6-speed manual transmission that I've got here. Comfort is the default mode. That's unless you want to switch the system into its Eco Pro setting, which softens the accelerator response and sets the aircon to work more efficiently and so improve frugality. When the road opens up though, you'll want to push the rocker switch forward into Sport. Sport trim models like this even get an extra Sport Plus setting, where the DSC stability control is disabled slightly for extra wheel slip in sharp cornering, and the optional adaptive dampers are nudged onto their sharper setting if you paid extra for them. Now, it's true that you need all this stuff to be fitted and all the right buttons to be pressed if this car is really to be anything like the ultimate driving machine promised by BMW's marketing. But correctly specified, it can come alive in the right hands on the right road. It stops very well too. There aren't many performance hatches with 1.6 litres of power that can stop from 70 to rest in under 47 metres. And what I really like is that unlike most premium sports hatches, you don't have to stretch to the pricier, pokier versions in order to get the kind of proper, potent performance that'll help you enjoy all of this to the full. Now, to prove the point, I've opted here for the entry-level 116i petrol model, one of two variants that uses a twin-turbo direct injection 1.6 litre petrol unit borrowed from the Mini. BMW has technologically thrown the kitchen sink at this twin power engine in order to try and match the contradictory needs of extra power and greater efficiency. So there's everything from high precision direct injection to Valvetronic variable valve control and double Vanos variable camshaft control. Now, you don't need to understand what all of that means. It's enough to appreciate that 50 miles to the gallon can be matched with a rest to 62 mile an hour capability of just 8.5 seconds on the way to a top speed of 130 miles an hour. And that's one of the feeblest engines in the 1 Series lineup, so you can imagine just how much poke resides further up the range. The Munich engineers have developed a 128 version with over 200 brake horsepower, but I can't imagine many 1 Series buyers wanting or needing to go much faster than rest to 62 mile an hour in 7.4 seconds on the way to a top speed of 140 miles an hour, those being the figures returned by the 118i petrol variant, which uses a tweaked 167 brake horsepower version of this same 1.6 litre petrol power plant. Most UK 1 Series buyers, though, go the diesel route, where the range begins with the frugally orientated 116D efficient dynamics model. Not that the standard diesel lineup isn't already pretty efficient. As before, it's based around variations of the same 2-litre diesel engine, the lineup beginning with the 116 brake horsepower 116D, graduating on to the 143 brake horsepower 118D, and going to the 184 brake horsepower 120D, which is capable of rest to 62 mile an hour in a Golf GTI rivaling 7.2 seconds, as well as returning a most un-Golf GTI like 62.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle. Having your cake and eating it has rarely been so satisfying. Taking any compact car and making it rear-wheel driven will always mean an inevitable set of constraints when it comes to styling and packaging. Such a layout will, for example, need you to mount the engine longitudinally, so you're going to have a long bonnet. And you'll need a drive shaft running to the rear axle, which will compromise rear cabin space. Now, even allowing for all of this, the original 1 Series was an unusual looking thing, and it had rear cabin space worse than some sports coupes. Both were issues that needed to be addressed with the second generation version, an unenviable task that landed on the desk of BMW stylist Adrian van Hooijdonk. He was clearly told not to meddle with the looks too greatly, and given that and the need not to alter the drive layout, the result of his efforts really isn't too bad. I'm looking here at the 5-door sports hatch variant. There's also a 3-door version available, and though still no great beauty, it does have a more mature, grown-up feel about it, partly because it's bigger, 83mm longer and 14mm wider than before. At the side, gone are the drooping creases in the doors, to be replaced by a more confident BMW shoulder line, culminating in what the brand calls a Hofmeister kink that extends well into the rear C-pillars. The rear, meanwhile, gains a set of LED tail lamps that resemble giant illuminating boiled sweets. But the practicalities are what's important. Could, for the first time in a 1 Series, 2 adults really be comfortable here in the rear? Well, the back doors open wider for a start, which always helps. And once you're seated, it's good to find that more than 2/3 of the 30mm wheelbase increase has been devoted to rear seat passenger legroom, now within 40mm of what you'd find on the rival front-wheel drive Alfa Romeo Giulietta. There's more headroom here too, and the lower window line makes the cabin feel airier. Now, none of this is enough to make this rear compartment what you genuinely call spacious. A humble Ford Focus offers much more, and there's certainly no question of transporting more than 2 adults comfortably, because you've got this huge transmission tunnel for the drive shaft to the rear axle. But at least the changes have meant that 2 adults can actually be quite comfortable here on short to medium length journeys. More thoroughly addressed is the issue of cabin quality. Quite frankly, the previous one didn't feel like a £20,000 car from behind the wheel. This one does. The instrument panel now cants towards the driver with higher quality plastics used throughout, and the centre console topped by a freestanding control screen, the functions for which are operated by the infamous iDrive controller, standard on all but the most basic models. It's all pretty intuitive, both to read and to use. My only comment would be that this 6.5-inch screen can attract some reflections in bright sunlight. Now, there are some nice design touches too, like the way that these cup holders in front of the gear lever have these removable inserts that can turn one into a coin tray, another into a key holder. In-cabin storage isn't that plentiful. You get a glove box, but it's significantly taken up by the instruction manual. But you do get a large bin between the front seats, inside of which are connections for iPods and MP3 players. In terms of ultimate carriage capacity, there's a 360-litre boot. That's 30 litres bigger than before. To extend it, there's a choice of rear seats that can be specified to fold either 60-40 or 40-20-40, depending on your needs. Flatten them, and you can free up to 1,200 litres of fresh air. BMW has developed 3- and 5-door versions of this 1 Series sport hatch, but we're going to concentrate here on the 5-door model, in mainstream form, equipped with either the 1.6-litre twin-power petrol engine or the 2-litre diesel. Now, for such cars, you're going to need to be budgeting somewhere in the £20,000 to £25,000 bracket. As for compact hatchback premium badged rivals with a sporty feel, well, everyone will have their own perspective on this, I guess. The most obvious competitor is Audi's A3 Sportback, which undercuts this BMW by between £500 and £1,500 model for model, but offers less power in each case and less rewarding front-driven handling. A Mercedes A-Class is even less sporty, so to find a true match for this 1 Series, you're probably going to have to think outside the box a bit more. What about an Alfa Romeo Giulietta? 5 doors of Italian style at prices which will save you a couple of thousand on this BMW. But again, you've got slightly less power, model for model, and front-driven handling. The search for more power might lead you to look at something a little more unconventional, like Citroen's surprisingly desirable DS4 Sport Hatch. Or if you're looking at a 3-door version of this 1 Series, you might also consider pokier versions of Volvo's C30. Ultimately, though, there's nothing quite like this BMW. Now, whichever mainstream 1 Series sport hatch model you choose, those with the 1.6 litre twin power petrol turbo engine, like the 116i that I've got here with 136 brake horsepower, or the 118i with 170 brake horsepower, or if you go for one of the 2 litre diesels, that's the 116D with 116 brake horsepower, the 118D with 143 brake horsepower, or the 120D with 184 brake horsepower. Now, whichever of those you choose, you should find your car to be reasonably well equipped, because all of them come with alloy wheels, the drive performance control system with its Eco Pro efficiency setting, air conditioning, a decent quality CD stereo, a chrome tailpipe finisher, an auto start-stop system, and a leather covered steering wheel. Safety wise, you get the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, DSC plus stability control, and the usual electronic assistance for braking and traction. Hopefully, once you've chosen your model, you'll have enough left over to dip into the lengthy options list, with many high-tech features borrowed from larger BMWs. One example of this is the high beam assist system that'll dip the headlamps for you at night, lights that can be specified in adaptive form to better illuminate your way in the darkness. There's also a lane departure warning system to stop you dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another driver, and cruise control that'll automatically brake for you to keep you a safe distance from the car in front on the highway. There's a park assist system that'll guide you into the tighter spaces, and business users can benefit from internet connectivity and integration for phones, smartphones and music players, as well as real-time traffic integration, and even web radio, Twitter and Facebook apps. Now, arguably, no manufacturer has made quite such impressive progress as BMW when it comes to improving efficiency. It'll come as no great surprise then to find that whatever 1 Series sport hatch model you choose, it'll return a very impressive set of fuel and CO2 figures. Now, these come courtesy of Efficient Dynamics. That's BMW's suite of energy-saving features that include things like lightweight construction. I mean, this car is up to 60 kilograms lighter than its predecessor, as well as stuff like brake energy regeneration, low rolling resistance tyres, electric power steering, and an auto start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck in traffic or you're waiting at the lights. Now, you can help yourself get somewhere near these kinds of figures on a regular basis by keeping a close eye on the optimum gear shift indicator on the dash, advising you of the right gear to be in for the right conditions, and even better by running frequently in Eco Pro mode, the most frugal of the options on the drive performance control system, and said to be capable of improving frugality by up to 20%. Now, it does this by remapping the car's engine configuration and by setting the heating, ventilation and air conditioning systems, even the heated seats and the heated door mirrors, to optimum efficiency. It also claims to be able to offer you useful tips for more efficient driving. Though many of these, you get things like stop activating kickdown or moderate your acceleration. Many of these aren't actually that helpful because they appear when you're pushing on a bit. As others have pointed out, it'd probably be more sensible if the Eco Pro system were disengaged at more than 75% throttle. Anyway, it's undeniably a useful thing. Use it and you should be able to get somewhere near the impressive fuel and CO2 figures that BMW quotes. On this 116i petrol model, you're looking at 49.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 132 grams per kilometre of CO2. Figures nearly matched by the 118i petrol variant, which manages 47.9 miles to the gallon and 137 grams per kilometre of CO2. The diesels, of course, are streets ahead of that, with a headlining 116D Efficient Dynamics model capable of returning 99 grams per kilometre of CO2, the first BMW engine to get under the magic 100 grams per kilometre of CO2 figure. Even the standard diesels stack up pretty well on the balance sheet, all delivering 62.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, provided you don't go for the larger wheel sizes. or when between 117 and 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. And that's an especially impressive showing from the 142 mile an hour 120D. Insurance groupings range between 17 and 25 for mainstream models, and residual values should be very good too. Industry experts reckoning that this 116i, for example, will retain 6% more of its original value over 3 years at 36,000 miles than a comparable Audi A3 or Alfa Romeo Giulietta. Other car makers create a compact premium sport hatch by merely prettying up an existing cheap one. BMW's 1 Series is different. Rear-wheel drive gives it a distinctive selling point, and it certainly still looks unique. Perhaps that's why 70% of its sales are to people new to the BMW brand. Those liking a style now easier to get on with and not frequently needing to transport rear seat passengers are understandably regularly seduced by its uncorrupted steering, its great chassis balance and its brilliant efficiency. It's certainly hard to argue with the changes BMW has wrought in this second generation version. Though you have to spend on the options list and press the right buttons for this to be a really rewarding driving machine. The results when you do so are impressive. As a result, with higher quality, more powerful engines and a pretty complete roster of high technology, this 1 Series is now arguably the car it should have been from the start. Of course, many of this model's subtler attributes will probably be lost on a clientele chiefly drawn to its badge. But whatever your motivation for purchase, go for one of these, and that warm and fuzzy feeling that comes with making a smart decision is never too far away.